professor at Colorado State University and the co-director for the Center for Risk-Based Community Resilience Planning. And on behalf of the organizing committee, myself, Terry McAllister, Jordan Burns, Laura Lowe's, and Sharif El Tawil, I'd like to recognize you, I'd like to welcome you, to identifying data guideline needs for community and regional resilience modeling. So we hope to have a great workshop, and we're going to run through some logistics, some of the motivation, the objectives, and of course the agenda. So as you know, resilience, if you're on this workshop, you likely know resilience is the ability to prepare for anticipated hazards, adapt to changing conditions, and then withstand and recover rapidly from disruptions. There's an ever-increasing volume of resilience-focused research. Many of you on this workshop are part of that volume of research. And these range from single commercial facilities to complex community and regional and national scale models. And so the one commonality that all of these models has is that they're effectively data hungry. They need a large volume of data, and this data comes in different formats across different disciplines. And so this workshop is really to address some of this. So with that, I'd like to pass to Terry for several slides talking about motivation. Terry?
Thank you, John. So I just would like to review three examples that help us maybe bring our minds down to what's going on right now in terms of planning for resilience and the type of efforts that are ongoing and the data that they need in addition to the modeling. So let me start with the Louisiana Office of Community Development. I recently received a communication from Sandra Gunner. She's a special projects manager with the Louisiana Office of Community Development. And they are concurrently addressing the impact of two hurricanes, Laura and Zeta, COVID-19, and most recently, an emergency declaration for the 2021 February winter weather, the freezing weather that they experienced for all 64 parishes, their entire state. So Louisiana has a state level RSF, Recovery Support Functions, structure under the National Disaster Recovery Framework, which has been established by FEMA. And they have a long-term recovery subcommittee, which is chaired by the Louisiana Office of Community Development and the Governor's Office of Homeland Security. So they are developing a system that starts at the state level and goes down to the parish level and community levels. And the recovery support functions, I listed those on the right here for those of you that aren't familiar with them. And you can see they cover 6 major topics. Underneath each of these topics is usually a 1 or 2 page list of specific items that would fit under these topics. So the key task under this effort is to develop data sets for each of these recovery support functions so that Louisiana can be better informed about their assets, the potential risk, and enable better assessments, especially as they receive repetitive impacts from disruptive events. And this requires the state to partner with its local communities so that each of them develops a profile that can be maintained and used to coordinate efforts across the state. Next slide, John. So the second example comes from Dr. Jennifer Gerardo. She's the Broward County Chief Resilience Officer and Deputy Director for the Environmental Protection and Growth Management Department of Broward County. She gave a presentation during a workshop that NIST held in January, just a couple months ago, on climate data and modeling efforts there. So their focus is advancing multi-jurisdictional initiatives. So this is adjacent counties in South Florida with a focus on sustainable water resource management and sea level rise adaptation planning. She played a lead role in organizing the Southeast Florida Regional Climate Change Compact. And this is a group of experts and end users, and they develop a unified regional sea level rise projection. And this is based on data about sea level rise, and it's used for planning purposes across 4 counties. And they use it for their regional climate mitigation and adaptation strategies. So as she was going through the things that they're doing, I identified the data that they're collecting for this planning. And you can see it listed here: sea level rise, rainfall intensification, groundwater elevations, 25-year storm surge, flood elevations for the 100 and 500-year events, and economic data to help them build the business case for resilience. They are focusing on infrastructure cost, but they're also looking at the business impacts and social impacts as well, and are taking a long view, an immediate and long-term benefits. And the types of things that they're working on are listed on the right there. So land use is very important, as is infrastructure siting. They're developing groundwater maps that they can maintain, developing resilience standards, and expanding their drainage fields and capabilities, identifying the level of service that can be expected with their infrastructure now and in the future, determining appropriate finished floor elevations for new construction, and then using all of this to inform their overall development strategies. Next slide, John. And then the last example I'd like to discuss is one that many of you may be familiar with, the 2013 Oregon Resilience Plan. Jay Wilson, who's the Clackamas County Emergency Manager, but he's also had an integral role in developing and promoting this plan, gave a 5-year review in 2018 at a workshop that NIST held. And as an overall statement, the Oregon Resilience Plan is a 50-year plan to reduce risk and improve recovery for the next Cascadia earthquake and tsunami. And they did a survey, and I think this gives us an idea of public expectations. 83% of Portlanders expect local government to provide emergency aid within 3 days of a disaster. And 42% say they would leave if electricity and water are not restored within 2 weeks. Now, the exact number of days or weeks may vary between communities, but it's clearly not months. And it's been shown in many studies that business can only tolerate 2, and maybe the larger businesses, 4 weeks of disruption of essential services before the businesses can no longer continue. So these types of needs are informing their resilience planning. So they have data needs for each of their planning steps. And I've just highlighted in bold, some of the key words here: resilience goals, target timeframes within infrastructure systems to restore functions, assessing performance of what they currently have, estimating what timeframes will be needed to recover functions given their conditions today, and then using that to develop statewide policy and actions. And in parentheses, I identified the types of data that might be needed to do this work. And it ranges from infrastructure data to social needs and demographics, service areas of infrastructure systems, redundancies, geospatial locations, understanding the level of damage and whether or not you can obtain supplies, access, and personnel, whether governance will be in place, and the types of policies and actions that might be considered. So on the right here are listed the task groups that are working on each of these planning steps. And you can see there is a focus on infrastructure, but they start by looking at business and workforce continuity. So I think this gives us a nice overview of why we're all working in this space and, the very real needs that exist today. And we're really looking forward to hearing from our presenters and the chat questions that are coming up. So John, I'm going to turn this back to you now. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. So hearing that, the workshop objectives, as you may have already read, are to better understand data needs for modeling both community and regional resilience across the different computational platforms. And we know there's other computational platforms out there. There's other software packages that have been developed by many of you. Today we'll be presenting 4 of these, but the breakout discussions will really be talking more generally about all resilience at the community and regional scales. So today, we hope coming out of this to outline common needs that are for common data schema at different stages of analyses. And so this ranges from the hazard itself to the damage and the loss of functionality, and then to the recovery of the physical infrastructure, as well as the supporting social and social and economic institutions that the infrastructure supports. And then identifying methods to promote data sharing so that data can be used across these platforms. So I want to run through the agenda today. We have a busy day, but hopefully a very exciting day. So at 9:30, and to keep in mind, these times are Mountain Time where this is being run from, where I'm sitting here in Colorado. So we're at about 11:15 Eastern Time or New York time right now for those of you around. So we'll have 20-minute presentations on these four popular platforms with 5 minutes of Q&A, and we'll keep pretty much to time. If they go a little long, then we'll eat up a little of the Q&A, but we'll have some time during the panel discussion. So then at 11:10, we'll have a presentation on design safe cyber infrastructure on data publishing and computational resources. Then a break, and this half-hour break will be a chance to get hopefully some food and caffeine but what we hope is that those of you that are participating will put questions in the chat, and we'll be monitoring that chat the whole time and pulling questions so that we can have an exciting and fruitful 45-minute Q&A discussion. And so the presenters will then join that and respond to those questions and have that dialogue. Then I'll give some very short instructions. They won't last 15 minutes, so this will be another chance for you to take 10 minutes. I would say perhaps join your breakout room, and I'll give some instructions when we get there in a couple of hours prior to going to those rooms. And then we'll have those panel discussions or breakout discussions for 45 minutes. They're going to be fast and furious. There's some framing questions that were developed by the facilitators. The facilitators are actually I'll jump to those. Here we see our facilitators. I won't go through this in too much detail because I think we can capture a few minutes back on this intro to give to our speakers coming up. But we'll have community and regional models, damage prediction, recovery models, mitigation models, and policy models. And I'll just remind you that each has a separate Zoom link, and then you'll return to the main Zoom. So you won't be sent to a breakout, but I'll give those instructions when we get there. Then we'll come back and have a plenary discussion with the room facilitators, and that'll be led by Walt Peacock and Judy Matreni-Reiser. And then I'll close out the workshop, and we hope this is the first in a series of workshops. And so, I'll close the workshop out by 3 p.m. local time or 5 Eastern. So before we get started, so please remember to use the Zoom chat field for questions and discussion. You don't have to wait for the presentation to be over. I think we're all, to say we're all experts in Zoom at this point is probably an understatement. So The thumbs up feature is actually not enabled. We don't have that in this particular Zoom account, so please ignore my second sentence there. And then, but we will be monitoring the chat. So time permitting, we'll ask the speakers the questions during those few minutes. And then if we don't get to those questions, we'll have them for the panel discussion in about 2 hours, or about 1 hour and 45 minutes. And then any questions that we don't get to will be used to inform the workshop report, and they'll be addressed there by the authors.
Thanks.